Hi everyone, this is Akash, and this tutorial is for you if you find that Docker is too complicated on Ugreen. I will help you learn it in a non-technical way. I'll make it super easy for you. So when you open your Docker app, first of all, you will see a few tabs here. Always the starting point for you would be image. All right. First, you have to download something called as an image if you want to have an app running on your Docker. What is an image? To understand it, let's say you want to install something on your Windows. Okay, on Windows, what do you do if you want to install something? You download an installer, then you keep on clicking next, 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 next. On every next, you give it some options. You say this is the place I want to install it, these are the options I want to install, and things like those. And finally you get a working app. Similarly, in Docker, you will first download an image, and then you will add a few settings to that image, and it becomes your app. All right. So under the image, you see two things here, image database and local. Image database is basically all the images which are available on a particular repo. Repo is the place where everybody publishes their images. They have given you access to hub.docker.com, which is the world's largest repo. Everybody publishes their images here. All these are coming from Docker Hub. The image that we are going to use is file browser, this image. When we search, you get all the results here. If you click on the title of this image, it takes you to the official Docker Hub page. Okay, there is a user called GTSTF who has published an image called file browser. That's the format. Okay, first you get to see the username and then the image name. You have to make sure that this is a well-reputed image because you don't want any rogue image. This has been downloaded more than 1,000,000 times. There are 10 stars on this, and if you search on the internet, you will see that this is a well-reputed image. We can use this. You will see something called as tag here. Tag is nothing but the versions: beta version, first beta version, 1.3 beta version, and the current stable version is 1.3.1 WebDev 3. Okay, tags are versions. There is another tag called the latest tag, which is nothing but the latest version. So latest tag keeps moving. Today, latest tag could belong to WebDev 3. After a month, it might belong to 1.3.2. You will also see the official documentation here. Sometimes you will see the documentation here itself. Sometimes it will have another link to the documentation. This is what is your Bible. You will see how to configure this, what are the settings and everything. This is where if you use ChatGPT, then you can copy it from here and then ask ChatGPT. So it doesn't get hallucinated. It gets it right from the source, which is the developer. All right. So let's go back here. Let's pull this image down. Pulling is basically downloading. It says downloading here in Docker. When you download an image, it's called pull. When you download it here, it asks you for the version number. You can either choose a version number here. Okay, these are the same versions that you saw here. See, okay, or you can leave it. If you leave it, then it will take the latest tag. Latest tag today, it's going to download WebDev 3. Why people generally say don't use latest is because let's say WebDev 3 is a version that you know 100% works for you. You know all the settings of WebDev 3. Tomorrow, when WebDev 4 is introduced, one setting changes. If you have latest version here, then what worked today with WebDev 3 will not work with WebDev 4 tomorrow, and latest is going to download WebDev 4 tomorrow, with which your settings might not work. So they generally say that have a hard version here, which you know already works for you. But I always use, of course, latest. Why? Because settings don't change that often, number one. Number two, latest means that you're getting the latest safe release with all the bug fixes. Okay, click on confirm. This is downloading it now. Once it is downloaded, it will show in your local tab. Local tab is where you see all the images that have been downloaded locally on your host. So let's see what we have learned so far. First step is that you have to get the image. Okay, downloading an image is called pulling an image. You add a few settings to your image, add a few settings, it becomes app. Tags is nothing but the versions. Latest tag is a moving tag that will always belong to the latest stable version. All right, it will keep moving. Today it could be 1.2.4, tomorrow it could be 1.2.5. That is why people say that if you want to have absolutely predictable results, then use a explicitly use a tag. Okay, so now we have the image here. Now, how do I convert this image to an app? By adding a few settings to this. There are two ways to add those settings. One is called Docker run and one is called Docker compose. All right, two ways. Docker run is here in container. This is Docker run. If I use this, then in the background, it's going to use docker run command. You will see the docker run command here. In the documentation, it says if you want to use it on command line, you have to run this command. This command, I don't have to run because I have a nice interface here from Ugreen. This container is docker run for me. This project is docker compose for me. Compose file looks like this. This is your compose. If I were to use compose, then I would use docker project. Will not be touching command line, don't worry. I'm just telling you two ways to run it. Docker run, docker compose. This is docker run, this is docker compose. All right. One more concept I would like to introduce to you is that your Ugreen NAS is called a host, in the sense that this is a host which is hosting a guest. That guest is called Docker. All right. Your Ugreen NAS is host. Also, I will, okay, let's first go to container, click on new container. It will ask you to select the image you want to use. We only have one local image. We'll use it. Now it brings you to this screen where you can give all the options with GUI with point and click. You don't have to type any command here at all. This is the image that we're using. This is the name of the container. CPU limit, whether you want to give it any less number of cores. Mine is a 6 core, so I can give it 2 cores, 1 core, whatever I want to do it. Generally, you will leave it at unlimited. I can also define how much amount of RAM I want to give it. I will also leave it at unlimited because these are low lightweight apps and they will not overwhelm your NAS by leaving them at unlimited. Auto restart policy, whether you want to restart automatically if it crashes. GPU performance, this is where I would like to introduce the next thing to you. Your app, it's called a container, right? It's called a container because this is containerized. It runs within a container, it's isolated. Your app does not have any access to your host resources. What was host? Ugreen NAS. Your Docker app does not have access to your Ugreen NAS by default. Okay. If you wanted to have access to GPU, you have to define it here. If you wanted to have access to any particular directory, you have to define it here. Okay. You control how much access your app has. That is why it's so secure. If I wanted to have GPU performance, I would have ticked it. I will leave it here. Environment variables, we'll leave them for now. Don't let them scare you. Basically, environment variables is a way for you to give a few more options to your app. So on one app, you might have an option called username, and you will find that in the documentation, and you will give the username here. That's what your environment variables do. Okay, another way of adding few options. We'll not use them now. You just have to worry about PUID and PGID, and they are already filled up for you by Ugreen automatically. All right, now let's look at volumes. We said that it will not have access, the app will not have access to your Ugreen NAS. It will not have access to your Ugreen NAS file system also. But I want it to have access to my file system. That's how I'm going to upload the files to this. That's how I'm going to download the files to it. How can we do it? We have to give a directory here. Okay. So this is the directory on my NAS. It will let me pick it up. I picked this directory, browser demo. This is the directory I want to give access to my app. And on my app, I have to say where I want to have the access. I'm using a special name called SRV here because this is required for this particular app, and you will find all that in the documentation. But for now, just understand this. In your app, there will be a directory called SRV. Okay, that SRV directory will have all the contents what are there on browser demo. All right, they will not be copied. Browser demo will not be copied to SRV. It will be a real-time shortcut. So your SRV is a shortcut to browser demo. Whatever changes you make here will in real time be reflected here. And the container permission, of course, whether you want to give it full access, read and write the files, or only read the files, not write the files, not delete the files. So we'll generally give read write. This is your volume. This is called a volume bind, by the way. When you are giving access to a particular directory on your host to your app, it's called volume bind. Okay. So Docker app is isolated, as we said, hardware and file system. Um, volume bind is basically uh, giving access to a particular folder or directory, whatever you might want to call it, on your host, which is your Ugreen NAS, to your app. I always use volume binds. All right. So volume bind is done. Now let's look at the network configuration. Before this, I have to explain to you a very basic thing about network. You probably know this about already, but every machine on your network has a unique IP address. All right, that is how you know what data to send to one machine and what to send to another machine. So for example, my Ugreen NAS has got this IP address 10.30.30.169. No other machine on my network has got this IP address. Okay, so if I want to access my Ugreen NAS, I tell my browser, or I tell whatever client I'm using, go to 10.30.30.169 and you will find a Ugreen NAS there. But then I have one IP address per machine, right? Each machine, one IP address. But then this Ugreen NAS has got many different applications. So how do we access a different application? So it will have many ports. Each application that I publish will have a port. So what you have essentially is you have a unique combination, all right? Like this, IP address and then port. So for example, here, my UGOS is running on port 9999. And this is the IP address of my machine. So I'm saying go to 10.30.30.169, access the application which is running on port 9999, which happens to be UGOS. Actually, it's not port 9999. I'll tell you in a little while. This is the basic thing that you have to understand. One IP address per machine, but many different ports. All right. Now there are three network modes. You have bridge, you have host, which is very easy, and you have MAC VLAN, which is a little bit more complicated, but we'll look at that in the subsequent videos. So we will generally use bridge. If you use host, you will see that it doesn't have anything to configure here. So this looks easy, right? You just give host and then click next. But problem with host is if there is a port which is already in use by an application, then host will not work. And in this case, we need the port 80 to be free. My container runs on port 80. If I give the host, okay, it will say that the port 80 on host will be used for port 80 on the app, but port 80 is used, and you know what it is used for? It is used for UGOS. So when I say 9999, if I did even 80, it would have taken me to the same application. All right, so port 80 is in use. What do? I use bridge mode. Click on bridge, leave the network name as it is, leave the subnet as it is. Anyway, you cannot change this either. Port mapping tells you that on your NAS, port 41005 will be directed to port 80 inside your container. So for you, this is the only port that matters. Okay, and you don't have to remember this either. It will give you a quick access to this. Click on confirm and confirm. You will see that this is running. You see this quick access. It tells you that you can access this application on port 41005, which will be redirected to port 80, which we are not concerned with. How it does that is absolutely transparent to us. Click on this. You see where it's taking you. It's taking you to 10.30.30.169 41005. So one application is published on the port 41005 for you. UGOS is running on port 9999. You can run any number of applications, each one running on a different port. So again, um, this is how you have unique combinations. 10.30.30.169 is the IP address. After that, colon, and then you have the port. All right. Okay, so let's log in here. Username and password is by default it's admin because we didn't define it earlier, so that this reverts back to the uh, previous one. And you see these four files that you see here, these are the files that I already had in the folder SRV that I showed you a little while ago. All right. uh, so last thing, let me show you. When you click on this container, you will see, of course, the quick access port here. You will see the volume. This is the volume that we bind it. So browser demo is basically accessible to my app, to my container at the location SRV with read-write permission. Network is the bridge mode. All right. Port mapping 41005 is forwarded to port 80. I don't have to worry about how it does that. Environment variables, we never gave any, but which were automatically given are here. Permissions, if I give any special permission, I didn't give it privilege mode, and these are permissions that were given. If you look at the logs, you will see everything that has been happening, and you will see here, for example, resetting admin user to default username and password, because we did give it username and password. We could have done that using environment variables, which I'll show in the next tutorial. Click on terminal. This is something I wanted to understand. This is last thing in this tutorial. Terminal gives you access to command line inside your app, not on the host. When I click on add, it gives me bin bash, okay, and bin sh. You can try either of those. So either bin bash will work or bin sh will work. Okay, so this is a terminal. This is the command line for your app. Okay, I will not use the command line, but I'll just show you. On the root, you see the directory hrv. This is a directory that is basically a shortcut to my browser demo directory. So if I try to look at the content, you see this cabinet for media scale and all this and that. Cabinet for media scale, all this is here. All right. So this is it. Just a quick recap. What we did. First, you will have to get the image. Downloaded the image is called pulling an image. You add a few settings to the image. It becomes app. How do you add the settings to image? Either with Docker Run or Docker Compose. Tags are nothing but the version of the image. Latest tag is a special moving tag that will always keep on moving and will be tied to the latest version of the image. Image swap, as I said, you can either use Docker Run or Docker Compose. Docker Run is container here. Docker Compose is with the project. You see a number of boxes here because generally Docker Compose is used when you have multiple stack of applications. Container is a single container. Uh, Ugreen NAS is called host. Okay, uh, the main machine which has got Docker running, that's called the host. Docker apps by them are isolated. They will not have access to the resources on your host. You control, you decide how much access you want to give it. Um, to give access to your files, you use either volume bind or volumes. I always use volume bind because they are easier. So volume bind is basically a way for you to give access to your directory, and they're easy. Click on this, select whatever you want, and tell it where you want to have the access, right? And select the permission. This is what we learned. And network configuration, generally you will always be using bridge mode. With bridge mode, it will automatically show you a port that is free. You don't have to choose this port. It will automatically give you the port that is free, and that port will automatically be mounted to the port which you need inside. When you click on confirm, it will take you there. And you can also access the terminal by going to containers, clicking on this, going to terminal, and adding a new terminal. You will be able to come here. So if you have to run any command inside the app, you can do it here. This is it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask them. I'll be doing part 2 and 3 of this as well, where we'll be taking up even more advanced concepts about Docker. Thank you.